Hey guys, what's happening? Thanks for tuning in, coming back and watching. I appreciate it. Hope your day is going really well. I'm back in Luminar 4 and I'm on part 4 of my little mini series about the canvas tools. I covered crop and straighten, erase, clone and stamp, and today that leaves us with number 4, lens and geometry. Very powerful, very awesome set of sliders and tools and whatnot, and it can really make a huge impact on your photo. So let's get into it. Here's an image that I took in Paris about 5 years ago. It's a raw file I took with an Olympus camera back when I had that. I did make a few minor filter adjustments. That's the base photo, unedited if you will. And there it is after a few adjustments in the Essentials tab. I just wanted to brighten it, fix the colors a little bit. So one more time, before and after. But lens and geometry, it's over here on Canvas Tools. I'm already here. And lens and geometry is at the bottom. This would be something that if you used Luminar 3, you might have noticed it was one of the tabs in the raw develop filter, but they pull these out of the sort of that area where you do filter adjustments in Luminar, and they put it over here with the canvas tools, which I think makes a lot of sense because this is really what you're doing. You're changing the canvas potentially with the edits that you do here. So let's get into this. Okay, the first two here are automatic distortion correction and remove chromatic aberrations. I want to point out that those two will work on raw files only. Auto distortion corrections, if you just click it, it's an automatic tick box, and based on the raw file, it'll do what it considers to be perspective correction on that. So I think it does a pretty good job. If you look at the before and after, let me just, I'll just do that there. Well, you know what, because that'll cover up the color. Let's just turn that off again. So there it is before. You can see, I mean, I shot this at, let's see, 12 millimeters. So that's fairly wide. So it's got a little bit of that, that barrel distortion, and I think it's straightened out pretty nicely there. So again, on a raw file, that'll work well. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. Below that, you've got remove chromatic aberration. Chromatic aberration is also called color fringing. Basically, it's colors often purple, for example, you'll see at the edge of high contrast areas. It'll remove that. I don't really have any in this photo, and not really a good photo to demonstrate that, but it's there in case you need it. And then defringe also is just a tick box. You just click that, and it's similar. It has any halos or edge noise in high contrast areas. It'll help remove that. So those three tools are at the top, and then you get to lens distortion. The difference between this and the one above, the auto distortion correction, is that one's based on the raw file, so it'll figure it out yourself. Or itself. That's where it, if you click the tick box here as I did, it'll take care of it for you. Lens distortion, the slider, is the manual version. So this is basically where you can just come over here and say, I kind of want to do this. And you have the ability to go further, right? Because you control it, whereas with the automatic distortion correction, it's automatic. You can also use both of them, by the way. So you can see that I'm really going quite a long ways. In fact, too far. You can see it's really bowing out over here. And so this is where you got to be careful. If you go the other way, if you've got a lot of pincushion distortion, you want to go the other way, then just be careful because you're going to end up having to crop away some of the canvas, or using the tools down here that I'll get to in a minute to compensate for that. So just keep that in mind, but I just wanted to point out that is lens distortion. It's great for overcoming barrel or pincushion distortion in your images, and it works great. Okay, next up is devignetting, and as the name implies, it takes away a vignette. So sometimes you'll see a vignette around the edges of an image caused by a lens, and so it's just basically just dark edges. Devignetting, you just make this, just drag this slider to the right, and you can see the edge has got a little bit brighter. There was apparently a little bit of vignetting there. I don't really use it a whole lot, to be honest, but it's good to have in case you need it. And the midpoint just helps you refine the areas that are brightened or darkened from using the devignette tool. Okay, so I'm gonna just click automatic distortion correction just to kind of put that back the way it, it reads the raw file, and let it have that. And then we're gonna get into this bottom section. Now this is where you can really fix a lot of lines that are off in a photo. Now, it doesn't have everything that I would like it to have, but it is very powerful, and it's very capable, and you can make a huge impact on your image. So let me just show you. All I'm going to have to do is walk through each of these sliders to demonstrate what they do. Vertical, the first one, if you drag that to the right, basically it'll tilt the image down, and if you drag it to the left, it'll tilt the image up. So It's tilting it vertically, which is it's tilting it on the horizontal axis, if that makes sense. I think that looks really good right there. Now, if you compare it to at 0, here's what happens a lot of times. There's an effect called keystoning, which is basically like if you're, especially if you have a little bit wider lens, and then you're on the floor and you're looking up and shooting things like buildings, architecture happens a lot. It looks like everything's leaning backwards, kind of, and they call it keystoning. And basically, this helps you with that. Now, it's not perfect every time, but I definitely think it's really solid. So in this case, you can see I'm tilting the image, so it looks more like I'm level, almost like I'm standing on a platform and shooting. About like maybe I'm 8 or 10 feet in the air and shooting into the room. Now, I've lost some of the above, but I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. But it levels the photo for me in that regard, so it removes that, which I think is wonderful. Next up, I'll fix this and I'll come and show you how I edit the photo in a second. Horizontal is just the opposite of vertical, so if I drag it that way, it rotates it on the other axis, which is it rotates it on the vertical axis, so it rotates horizontally. This is great if you're slightly off center when you shot something. You can kind of scooch it around a little bit, and I don't know why I'm dancing like this, but it just makes me kind of want to swiggle a little bit, whatever that means. But it allows you to kind of just scooch it around a little bit. I don't know how else to say it. I've done it on many a photo where I'm slightly off center, because you take photos, you're like, oh, perfectly center, and then you look at it, and you're like, yeah, really not so much. And if you just squish it a little bit, it helps. So vertical rotates up and down on the axis, right? And horizontal rotates left and right on the axis. Great for fixing kind of screwed up things in your photo. Rotate, as the name implies, is just like in the crop tool, right? So it allows you to rotate the photo, which this one, I'm going to let that reset. Probably needs, because I'm usually a little bit crooked, so I don't know. It's hard to tell. I think that's straight. We'll go with it. There I've rotated it. Aspect, that actually changes the aspect ratio. So if you drag it this way, you're actually squishing the aspect ratio in from that from the sides, and then if you pull it the other way, you're basically elongating the image. Keep in mind you're losing things, so you'll end up needing to crop or compensate, like with the scale slider, which I'll get to in a second. In fact, I'll just get to that now. So let's say I wanted to change the aspect ratio, maybe not that dramatically, but something like that. Scale, as the name implies, it basically scales the photo, so it's going to allow you to zoom it. So if you drag it to the right, you can see it's going to start filling up that frame, right? So I'm basically zooming in, and even though I changed the aspect ratio because I drug this scale that far to the right, it basically covered those gaps for me, right? And conversely, if I go the other way with scale, it's kind of like zooming out, and my photo gets smaller. I think scale looked pretty good here, where I scooched it and I filled those gaps that were up there. Okay, and the last two are X and Y offset, and don't confuse them with vertical and horizontal. So the X offset, if you drag it to the left, it scooches the photo over. It's not rotating like vertical and horizontal at the top of this little section. They rotate on the axis. This is actually scooting it along the axis, so I'm actually losing the photo. The more I drag the X offset one way, I'm losing that bit of the photo, and vice versa, right? So it allows you to scooch the photo over if you need to. I don't think I need to in this case. And Y is just the opposite, right? So it's the same thing, except up and down. I'm on the Y axis, and I'm offsetting. I'm providing an offset above it or below it. And so that's the difference between, I'm going to reset these two. And that's the difference between X offset and Y offset versus the vertical and horizontal. They rotate the vertical and horizontal on those axes, whereas X and Y offset, they just scoot it along that axis, and you end up losing parts of the photo. So for this photo, what I would personally do is I want to fix that keystoning. So I'm going to do something like this, right? I think that looks pretty good. It looks like I'm a little bit more level, as though I shot it from a little bit elevated spot. And then I think I would come in here with the Y axis, or Y offset technically, and drag that. And see, when I did the vertical fix, it scooched, because it tilted, a lot of the top of the photo went out of frame, but it doesn't cut it off. It's still there. So if you drag it back down with Y offset, you can actually recapture that, right? And so now I'm in a much better spot, I think. Let me show you the before and after with the lens and geometry tool, because I think I made a big impact. So there's the before. Now again, I changed the light and the color a little bit simply because it needed it. But if you look primarily at the lines and how it looks as though the photo is kind of it looks like I'm looking up with a wide angle lens, which is what I'm doing. But it's all kind of tilting backwards. And now it's a lot more, it's what's standing up straight, I guess is the best way of putting it. And so that's what I think is so great about particularly like the vertical and then using that with the Y offset. I use that quite a bit. I did a little bit here at the aspect ratio as well as the scale. So using all of those in combination, not to mention the auto distortion correction, really allowed me to do quite a bit to the photo. So one more time, there it is. You can see more floor, which is kind of dead space. There's no anchoring element, and I want to focus more on the beautiful, this is the Opera Garnier in Paris. I mean, the architecture is just stunning. So that allowed me to sort of bring that to life and bring it to forefront. And you know what? I just think it looks much better. So that's how it works. That's lens and geometry. Hope that's a helpful example for you. I recommend experimenting. There's no, do this every time or do that every time. Just experiment. Every photo is different. A lot of photos, you may be used to just looking at them and they have keystoning and things like that, and you just have accepted it for a long time. So if you have not ever used tools like this, try them out. Go find some photos where you took of a skyline or something, or some buildings, and it looks like they're leaning back. Try it out and see what you can come up with, because you may be surprised. And then you'll also often find that you start to look at your photos differently, and you'll start to notice it more often in your shots and think, God, I can fix that. Sorry, I guess. No, it's a great skill to have, learning how to do these things, and can certainly impact your photos in a very positive way. So, okay, that's it. That is a 4-part mini-series, if you will, on the Canvas tools. Wrapping up with this one. Next up, I'm going to start on some masking. And I've also got some workflow videos I like to do. So I'm not sure what's coming next, but I'm going to be hitting on masking and diving into the different components of masking in deep dive videos next. And that'll be soon. So thank you for watching, my friends. Please do subscribe if you haven't, and like and share and comment. Leave me some feedback on what you think about these. And by the way, if there's certain things you'd like me to cover in videos, I'm open to suggestions. I sit here by myself and try to figure out what I think people need, but I don't always know. So if you have some ideas, let me know. Okay, I'm done. I've been talking a lot. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Have a great one. I'll see you soon. Take care, and adios.